I am informed that 61 has just made it to the jury room, so we're ready once we cover what we need to cover.
Okay, just very quickly, I wanted the court to give you an update about the motion to quash.
Yes.
We're going to have a report for you that will indicate that there were no deputies or any sheriff's personnel present, that it was Mr. Winnie, apparently, and his photographer only at the time that the defendant was interviewed.
So that's Winnie.
That's
Winnie, what I took from you yesterday was really all you want to do is play the interview. And so that's one of the four. It's really ready for us to engage the defense, but I just soon figure out what we're doing with it.
Right. Just want to give you some updates. And then with respect to Diggs, I expect that the report will indicate the same thing.
Were they at the same facility?
No, I don't believe so.
One was at Rice Street and one was at the North Annex.
Correct.
Okay.
And then there was a second interview with Winnie, of course, at the North Annex. But I believe that the one that we're interested in occurred at Rice Street, I believe.
Okay, I mean, it occurred where it occurred. If you are representing to me that the only people within earshot of that interaction were Mr. Winnie, his photographer, who presents the same issue, and Mr. McIver, then we've reached the point where we need to engage the media, and you're going to find out what the situation was with Mr. Diggs.
Yes.
Okay.
And confirm it for you. Secondarily, I just want to give a flag for everybody and give a heads up that I believe now it would be proper and legal for the state to introduce evidence of a prior difficulty between the parties. That was the issue that kind of rose yesterday when we were trying to
burnt finger,
whether or not the defense had gotten notice. And right after we spoke, we did give them all the information that, of course, we had. And I believe now at this point, particularly after the cross-examination, that it would be particularly relevant.
So when you say you provided the defense with information, it's what you had expected would have been communicated Sunday night.
Correct.
Which was very soon after you learned about this information.
That's correct.
It's nothing beyond what you had understood was sent on Sunday night.
That's correct.
Okay. So that information was sent when?
Within 5 minutes after our discussion yesterday morning.
Okay. So the defense has had it now for not quite 24 hours.
Correct.
And you would seek to get into that through Ms. Carter this morning or someone else later?
Correct. Ms. Carter witnessed it.
Okay. All right. Well, that would then be on your watch. Well, before we get to that, anything else from the state?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Harvey.
Hi.
Hi. Good morning.
And again, so clearly we just got this information. I understand the state just got this information. But you know they've had, you don't want me to go through, I know you don't want me to go through it, but you know, opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, hours and hours and hours in which this wasn't said. So that's going to lead me to go back through all of that again. I don't know whether I have any significant legal basis to say no, except for the lateness of
Sure. I think that would be a fair area for you to explore. That Darren Smith, Rucker, and it didn't come up. And Ms. Carter's going to explain it in whatever way she's going to explain it. But provided you do that in an orderly and fairly efficient manner, you're not going to get pushback from me that you are going through all those. I think that's appropriate. And that would be how it would play out. Okay. So there aren't any details that you're aware of, Mr. Rucker, that weren't committed to writing and shared with the defense.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. If the jurors are ready, let's bring them in. If we could get Ms. Carter in here as well, please. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Good to see you.
You're becoming a regular here.
Really?
You're feeling pretty organized, Mr. Rucker, now that you had all evening to get the redirect together?
I am.
Great.
We'll be going into every single area, just a couple of key ones. All rise for the jury.
Juries are present and counsel, Your Honor.
Thank you, Deputy King. You all can be seated. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning. Juror 61, you doing okay?
Right.
Okay. I mean, that looks like health, physically wise, everything is okay? Okay. If you need time to work through logistics and whatnot, lunch needs to be longer, talk with your colleagues, we'll do what we can to help you address that. But health-wise, you're okay?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Maybe a little rattled, but you're able to move forward?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for being here. Mother Nature has brought in some strong winds. Perhaps she's trying to get some new witnesses into court. But for this morning, we're going to continue with our veteran witness. You may recall that Mr. Rucker had started his redirect. I'm going to let him wrap that up this morning, and we'll see what happens after his redirect. Mr. Rucker. Oh, and Ms. Carter, I know you know this, but I want to get it on the record because it's now 2 days ago that you took the oath, but that oath you took to tell the truth remains in effect.
Okay.
All right.
And good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, counsel. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Carter.
Good morning.
Since we last saw you yesterday, have you and I talked about your testimony or anything?
No, we have not.
Okay. And just sit a little bit closer for us and remember to use your outside voice.
Okay.
And let me ask you this. I think when I showed you the video yesterday, as you were, as a vehicle that we believe was yours, that you were in, was traveling in between 10th and 12th Street, I asked you if you knew what time you arrived at the hospital.
Yes, you did.
And as you sit here today, do you remember?
No.
Okay. And also, there were some questions that were put to you by Mr. Harvey yesterday about the actions of the defendant once he actually got out of the car or the SUV when you arrived at the hospital. You remember that?
Yes.
And I think he asked you whether or not the defendant actually got out of the car before it stopped moving and he was running to the front of the hospital. You remember he asked you that?
Yes.
And was he? Did he get out of the car before it stopped moving, and was he running to the front of the hospital?
I didn't see him running.
Okay. How about the getting out of the car before it stopped moving?
It looked like that kind of on the video, but I was looking straight ahead when I was in the car.
Okay. So would that be fair to say that you don't know?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have... Now, can you give the jurors some idea what was your state of mind when you pulled into the valet at that time?
I was relieved to be at the hospital, but I was upset, and I was trying to stay still focused on being safe and driving the vehicle.
Okay. So, is the video on your screen right there?
Yes.
You can see it?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like for you to just tell us the first instance that you recognized the vehicle that you were traveling in that night when you arrived at the hospital.
Hold on one second.
Hold on
Can you
one
pause? Do we know how to turn this big screen on? I've not ever been involved with that. Oh, wait, I can reach it. Look at that. When I press the power.
Yes.
One of the few powers reserved to the judge in this trial. The on-off button. Thank you for flagging that, Deputy. I can't see it from here.
Okay, yes, let's start the video.
There I am.
Okay, can you stop it? And do you know what time Or strike that. Let me ask you a better question. On this video, can you tell the jurors what time is listed on the video?
10:02.
10:02. And is it fair to say that we know that that time cannot be correct, right?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, it's not fair to say. We don't know what time is correct, we don't know what time isn't correct. We've got different testimony, different times, and that's precisely what the jury is here to determine. So I object to that question.
Okay. I gather there's an objection.
There's an objection.
There is, and the we know is a problem because what you think may have happened is what you'll relate to the jury later.
I understand.
I think more appropriate would be to highlight conflicts between timestamps if
Right.
this witness recalls other timestamps.
Right. You recall seeing the video as you traveled through 12th Street, correct?
Yes.
And you recall seeing the video that Mr. Harvey showed you as you traveled through 12th Street, correct?
Yes.
And what time did Mr. Harvey show you the video indicated you traveled through 12th Street?
It was around 10 o'clock, right at 10 o'clock, I think.
Okay. And what time did the video show that you traveled through 12th Street when I showed it to you?
It was 10 o'clock, 10:02. I can't
remember.
No, that was
Okay.
at the end of a long day.
End of a long day. I would agree with that. And the valet video that we see right here is 10:02, correct?
That's what it says on my screen.
That's what it says. Okay. Now, can you push the video play? Now, as you look at the video, do you see where Mr. McIver is?
No.
Stop it for a second.
Oh, I do see it now, sorry.
Okay. Let's see if you can get oriented.
Okay.
Where is the vehicle that you were traveling in?
Right there.
Draw us a little circle. Okay. And where's the defendant?
Right here.
Okay. Now, were you watching him from the time that you first saw him exit the vehicle?
No, it's not.
Okay. Do you think if we rewound it, now that you know where he is in the video, and allowed you to look at it from the beginning, you'd be able to answer the question of whether or not he ran to the front of the hospital after he got out of the vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. We run it all the way back, and I want you to tell us when you first see him get out of the vehicle.
Right there.
Right there, okay.
Yes.
All right, so now let's let it play. Can you tell the jurors, did he appear to be running to the front of the hospital?
No.
And you knew, or did you know, that the defendant liked to run, like really run?
Yes.
Yes. And did you know him to participate in the Peachtree Road Race?
Almost every year.
Almost every year. How long had you been at the hospital when the defendant asked you to get his phone out of the car?
Maybe 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. And at the time that he asked you to get the phone out of the car, did he tell you exactly where it was?
On the charger.
On the charger. Now, when he was talking to you 15 minutes after you arrived at the hospital and asked you to get his phone out of the car off the charger, did he appear to be in shock when he told you that?
Well, that complicated.
Shock is a complicated term.
Yes.
What's the word that Mr. Harvey used yesterday?
It's the word that she used. And that's an incorrect characterization. I went from the...
Okay, well, it's an accurate characterization in that you used the word, but your basis for using the word was a statement that you attributed to Ms. Carter. So I'll let you use the word in light of what was discussed yesterday.
Was he in shock?
Not really.
What do you
No.
mean, not really?
Well, he seemed pretty calm.
The phone charger, where was it in relationship to where he was sitting in the vehicle?
Well, I know now that it was plugged into.
Excuse me, I object to the, I know now.
Okay.
At the time that he asked you to get the phone from the car, where did he tell you it was?
On the charger,
Where was he sitting?
in the back.
Okay. How far is where he was sitting from the charger?
Very close.
You were able to actually get the phone from the car?
No, I did not.
You received it
From the valet.
From the valet.
Mhm.
You recognized it to be his phone?
Yes.
Okay. And when you gave him his phone, what was the first thing that he did?
He looked at it and started scrolling through his screen. Or he was doing this.
With his fingers.
Yes.
And while he was scrolling with his fingers through the phone, what was the first thing he said to you?
This doesn't look good.
This doesn't look good.
Yeah.
Now, at that time, you all had not gotten any updates about Diane's condition, right?
No.
And when he said to you, this doesn't look good, what was he doing?
Sitting there scrolling through his phone.
Okay. What was the next thing that he did or said?
He looked up and looked beyond me. I was standing with my back toward the door and said, I don't trust these guys.
And the guys that were behind you in the doorway were uniform officers.
Yes.
And so did you say anything back to him in response to that?
No.
What did he say next?
Danny Joe, I hate to see you get wrapped up in this. You just need to tell them that you're down here as a friend of the family.
Now, did he say this to you during the same conversation right after looking past you at the uniform officers?
Yes.
Now, in actuality, who drove the truck to the hospital?
Me.
And so can you tell the jurors, was the defendant asking you to tell the truth about who was driving the truck during the shooting?
I'm going to object to
What? Tell me, I hear the word objection. The basis for the objection.
that. Characterizing what somebody else either intended or did. It's the characterization that I'm objecting to.
Okay. I'll allow the question.
Was the defendant asking you to tell the truth about who was actually driving the truck when you arrived at the hospital?
I couldn't tell what he was doing. I can tell you what I thought.
And what was that?
And again,
Then we need to move on.
Okay.
Well, is it a truthful fact that you had just arrived at the hospital as a family friend? Is that true?
Yes.
And how did you arrive at the hospital?
Driving the vehicle.
But what was the defendant asking you to say?
That I.
this is why you ask an answer.
Sustained.
What do you call an untruthful statement?
Again, this is why you ask an answer to ask this. This is direct. This is redirect.
Right.
I understand, and I think you've covered it and are in a position to argue what you want to argue at the appropriate time.
Okay. What did you say back to the defendant when he asked you to say that?
I leaned down and I said, Tex, I just drove you into the emergency room.
Right.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Tex, I just drove you into the emergency room.
What else did you tell him?
Well, he he looked up at me when I said that, and he said, well, they don't know that.
And then what did you say?
I said, I can't lie.
So why did you tell him I can't lie?
Well,
Or why she did it, or
I can't-
object to that was the beginning.
Okay. The objection is noted. You may answer the question.
Why did you tell him you can't lie?
I couldn't make up another story. I didn't want to make up another story. I didn't see why I needed to make up another story.
And was the story that he was asking you to make up a truthful one?
No.
Let me renew my objection, move to strike, ask for a cautionary instruction. All we're doing is doing the same thing over and over again. You had already sustained my objection,
So I'm going to ask Mr. Rucker to move to another area now, and
Fine.
I'm going to handle it that way. So
but I did ask to strike, and I did ask for a 105 cautionary instruction.
you did. No, I heard all that, and it's hopefully on the record twice now. And I'm asking Mr. Rucker to move on to another area.
I understand. But it was an area that was covered very extensively in cross-examination.
Okay. And you have now covered it very extensively in redirect
Okay.
examination.
Okay. Now, who was the first person that you saw that showed up at the hospital after you gave the defendant his phone?
As the first person that I saw after I gave him the phone, I can't really remember what happened right after that, because an officer came into the room and asked me if I would mind waiting in another area.
Okay. And then sometime later, did you see someone arrive at the hospital?
Well, after I went in the room with the chaplain, Steve Maples came to the hospital.
Right. Was he the first person that you saw that you and the defendant both knew who arrived at the hospital?
Yes.
And Billy Corey never arrived at the hospital?
No, he did not.
Now, I want to ask you this. At the time that you were at the hospital, did the defendant say anything to you about going to jail?
He did look at me and say, I can't go to jail.
Did your day-long conversation yesterday with Mr. Harvey, did he ever ask you about that?
No.
When did the defendant say that?
I'm not really sure exactly what period of time, but it seems like we were in that large waiting room and that it was after we came back from the hospital. I mean, after I came back from APD.
And who was present there in that area?
Steve Maples and my husband, Tom Carter.
And can you tell us what he said exactly, as best you can, with as much detail as you can, about what he said?
Just, I can't go to jail.
And, you know, to be fair, when I talked to you yesterday morning, I didn't ask you about that either, right?
No.
But today is not the first time that you have mentioned that, correct?
Correct.
This is redirect.
Okay.
Is this the first time?
Well, hold on. So your objection is that the questions are structured in a leading manner.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Rucker,
I understand.
that's good.
I'm just trying to...
I understand also.
Yeah. Is this the first time that you said that?
No, it's not.
Okay. You got into a discussion yesterday with Mr. Harvey about what hand that the defendant had the gun in, and you kind of showed the jurors a little bit with your hands. Is that correct?
Yes.
If I were to allow you to hold the handgun and give you a bag, do you think you could position it in such a way that you could kind of show the jurors what you saw the defendant doing when you turned and looked at him?
Yes.
Okay. once again, Judge, this weapon has been made safe.
Yep. It remains in the condition it was yesterday, or the day before.
Would you like a plastic glove before you handle it? No? No. Okay. I'm going to take it out of the bag. If you would just reposition it and try very hard at the point of the jurors in the way in which, and then with the court's permission, once you get it positioned, is it possible we can have the witness step down in such a position that everybody can see it?
Sure.
Good. Everybody see from there? Okay. Now, if you could show the jurors kind of what you saw.
Because I could see about this much of the gun, I could see plastic bag, and I could see some hands. But this one,
Okay. Did you have a chance to see? Okay. Yes, excuse me. That's okay. Would you do it again for Mr. Harvey? Okay. That's what you saw the defendant do.
yes,
With his hands, seconds after the shot was fired.
yes. The smoke was over the top.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And when you did that demonstration for the jurors, what hand were you holding predominantly the gun in?
My right hand.
Do you know whether or not the defendant is right-handed or left-handed?
Right-handed.
When you talked to Mr. Harvey yesterday and you said that when you spoke to Detective Smith, you were foggy. What did you mean by that?
Well, it was sometime in the wee hours of the morning, and I just experienced probably the worst event that had ever happened in my life, and learned that my best friend had died while I was sitting alone in a seemingly vacant building. And I was just in bad shape.
And as Mr. Harvey asked you yesterday, you really were just trying to do the best you could.
I was.
Can you tell the jurors, were you interested in really just getting out of there?
I was ready to go home, but I wanted to do what I needed to do.
And can you tell the jurors, yesterday when you said you felt that way for months, what did you mean?
Oh, I was like a zombie for about 2 months. I just walked around kind of feeling numb.
Did you seek any help to
Yeah.
recover?
Yes, I did.
Let me object to that. How is this redirect? And one, two, we're getting into a whole different ballgame here that wasn't brought up on cross-examination.
So how far are you planning on stopping right? Okay, then we'll go on to another area.
Right.
No. And I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Can I explain? May I explain to you?
I just wish we could do this on jury, but...
He's you can't see. He's pointing
I see. Okay.
Oh, sure. This is about when we had a sidebar yesterday. With our meeting. You all should disregard whatever you may recall Ms. Carter said in response to Mr. Rucker's last questions. If you wrote it down, cross it out. And Mr. Rucker is going to move on to another topic. Just that last question and any answer you may have heard.
Okay. Can you tell the jury, when did you learn that Diane had passed away?
I wasn't paying attention to what time it was, but I was up there in the room by myself and got a text.
Okay. And you got the text message from whom?
My husband, Tom.
And was it before or after you spoke to Investigator Ricker and the other investigator?
After. It was while I was waiting.
Okay. Was it before or after you spoke to Detective Smith?
It was before.
Now, as you sit here today, for the last couple of days, have you been kind of in a fog the way you were back in September of 2016?
No, yesterday I was very tired, but not like, no.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you about something that you told Mr. Harvey yesterday. He asked you, when you talked to Detective Smith, did you tell him whether or not it was a horrible accident?
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury why would you say that to Detective Smith if you have told us that you actually didn't see what happened in the back seat, what he was doing?
Because I couldn't imagine it being anything other than a horrible accident.
Because as Mr. Harvey asked you yesterday, I mean, Sunday was just a wonderful day at the ranch, right?
Yes, it was.
And you had not really seen a history of things between them that would make you think otherwise.
Correct.
One of the things Mr. Harvey asked you yesterday, if the reason why you said to Detective Smith that the defendant was asleep was because he wasn't participating in any conversations about politics. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, could you tell the jurors, when you reached the intersection of Piedmont and Ponce de Leon, were you guys talking about politics at that time?
No.
Right. What were y'all talking about?
The Claremont Lounge.
What is the Claremont Lounge?
It's an old hole in the wall that's got a dancer in there that goes by the name of Blondie.
And what street is the Claremont Lounge located on?
It's on Ponce de Leon.
Right. And what did you say to Diane when you reached the intersection of Piedmont and Ponce de Leon about the Claremont Lounge?
I told her it was right down there, and that's where Tanner and Samantha had been the night before.
And so as you proceeded down Piedmont, is that what the conversation was about?
Yes.
Well, that's not really a conversation about politics, is it?
No.
Object to the following question.
Is it a conversation about politics?
No.
No. But at this point, did you know whether or not the defendant had the gun in the back seat?
I knew it had not gone back to the front seat, but I didn't really know where it was.
Okay. And did you look back there to see what he was actually doing?
No, I did not.
Could you determine whether he was asleep or awake?
No.
Yesterday, Mr. Harvey asked you whether or not you told Detective Smith that based on what you saw between Diane and the defendant, that you believed that the defendant worshipped Diane. You remember that?
Yes.
Now, let me ask you this. How soon after Diane's death did you learn that the defendant was trying to sell her clothes and her jewelry?
Tuesday. Maybe it was Wednesday.
How many
Tuesday,
days was that after she died?
1 or 2.
And when you, to use Mr. Harvey's word yesterday when he talked to you about this, when you confronted the defendant at the flag football game 2 weeks later, what did he tell you was the reason that he still had not picked up the remains of his darling Diane?
He said the woman had not called him back.
Did he say anything to you about, hey, I'm waiting for some urns to come in?
He did. He said something about that he was looking for a special Western urn for her.
Right. And to this day, have you ever received an urn from the defendant?
No, I've not.
Do you know anyone who has?
No.
Can you tell the jurors the entire time you were with the defendant at the hospital there after Diane's death, did you ever see him emotionally break down?
No, I did not.
Once you learned of Diane's death at the Atlanta Police Department, did you break down?
Oh, yes.
And you've seen the videotape of your interview, correct?
Yes.
It's actually captured on video, isn't it? Or is it captured on video?
Yes.
During the early morning hours, when you got back to the condo with the defendant and you saw him making phone calls, did he break down then when he was on the phone?
No.
How did he appear to be to you?
Calm.
Calm. When you heard him saying to somebody on the phone, hey, it's been an accident, Diane is dead, I can't go into details, did he appear to be in shock when he said that?
No.
Same objection.
We're using this term not in any medical sense it might have, but in the way it was referenced yesterday.
That's correct.
Okay, I'll allow the question and answer.
Okay. Yesterday, about how long do you think we spent, or you spent with Mr. Harvey talking about Darling? Short time, or how would you describe it?
What's the relevance of that?
I'm just about going to another area of transition.
Okay, let's just transition to that other area.
Okay. When Mr. Harvey was talking to you yesterday about your reactions immediately after the shot, you told him that after the shot went off, you just wanted to get out of the car. You remember that?
Yes.
And why did you tell Mr. Harvey yesterday that you just wanted to get out of the car after you heard the shot go off?
Because I knew Diane was getting ready to. She was going to be very upset. She was going to be angry.
She was going to be angry. Had you ever seen Diane get angry before at the defendant?
Yes.
Man, in all the time that you had known them, about how many times would you say you have seen Diane get angry at the defendant?
Well, more of a. I don't know if you'd call it angry.
I just want you to describe it to the jurors.
Okay. Irritated. Irritated.
Okay. And was it going to be a soft, friendly irritation? Or you describe for us what you mean when you say irritated?
Well, she could get on a subject that she thought you had done something wrong and wear you out about it.
And what you out?
Wear you out.
You knew that about Diane, right?
It had happened to me.
I'm just trying to understand.
No,
I'm just
it's
trying to.
I appreciate what you're trying to do. Maybe a lot of people do, but it is a constraint imposed upon someone engaged in direct. So I know you can ask the very same question.
Yeah.
Two different words.
Yeah. Has she even got on you before?
Oh, yes.
And can you tell the jurors, had you even seen, or had you seen Diane get on the defendant about that Sunday night at dinner at Longhorns?
Yes.
Right. And can you tell the jury what did Diane get on the defendant about?
Eating.
And can you tell the jurors those occasions when you have seen Diane get on the defendant, as you say, do you normally stick around to hear the whole thing?
No, if I can move to another location, I would.
Why?
It was annoying.
Now, whenever you would see Diane go off on the defendant, have you ever seen the defendant go off on Diane?
No,
Not ever?
maybe once.
And can you tell the jurors, whenever you would see Diane go off on the defendant, would she do it in front of others?
Yes.
Do you have an opinion regarding who was, if anybody, the dominant person in the marriage?
Diane.
Now, I want to ask you about a circumstance in which young Austin burned his finger. Do you recall a circumstance like that?
Yes.
And can you tell the jurors about how old was Austin when he had this incident when he burned his finger?
10 or 11.
Do you know how old he is today?
12. So probably 10.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors this incident where Austin burned his finger, where did it occur?
His actual burning his finger
Yeah.
there was a fire pit that was out in the front pasture on the other side of the pond that's in the front of the house.
What house?
The ranch in Eatonton.
Near a fire pit near the front of the house in Eatonton,
Yes.
the ranch.
Yes.
And can you tell the jurors who was present?
Well, Ava and I were down there, and Austin was down there, and Tex and Diane. I believe it was Austin's birthday.
Are you sure about that?
Not 100% positive, but Tom wasn't down there because it was on a Saturday and he was working.
Okay. And so can you tell the jurors what happened?
Austin was hysterical because his finger was on fire and he was screaming.
What happened after that?
I put his finger in a baggie with ice and ice water in it because I knew that would take the heat out of it.
Say it again.
I knew that would take the heat out of it.
Okay. And so then what happened?
Well, they went to bed and the ice bag, I guess, leaked on the bed. It spilled out and everybody got up and I heard Austin screaming again and crying. So I got up and went in to investigate.
Okay. Now, can you tell the jurors who was present at the ranch during this incident?
Ava was in the bed asleep, and it was me and Austin and Diane.
Okay. Where was the defendant there?
Yes, I'm sorry.
So when you went to investigate, where did you go?
Into their bedroom,
Whose bedroom?
Tex and Diane's,
And why did you go into Tex and Diane's bedroom?
because that's where Austin was.
And can you tell the jurors, did you actually see the water or anything on the bed that had spilled out of the bag?
Yes.
And so can you tell the jurors what happened when you got inside the room?
Austin was screaming. Diane had taken the bag and thrown it in the sink in the bathroom. And Austin was crying because his finger was burning.
So what happened next?
I was trying to get the bag back, and Diane and Tex were arguing.
And can you tell the jurors, how would you describe the argument?
It was very heated, and Diane was saying that there was nothing wrong with him, and I was focused mainly on Austin because I knew how bad his finger was hurting because I burned my finger before like that. And Diane was saying he was all right. Tex was trying to get Diane to be quiet, and they they shoved each other, and Tex kind of pushed Diane out of the bedroom and closed the door.
that you had known them, had you personally ever seen that kind of interaction between them before?
No.
And can you tell the jurors, did you speak to Diane about this incident later?
No.
You didn't say anything to her at all?
No.
And is there a reason why you didn't?
They were both drinking. And I just didn't.
You just didn't.
No.
Did you say anything to the defendant about the incident?
No.
And, you know, was Diane a private person?
Yes.
And tell the jury about what kinds of things would she be private about?
I don't know where we're going with this, but this has been asked before a lot.
We'll ask it one more time.
Yeah.
She was private about money, even she did enjoy really nice things. But one of her employees one day had taken her LinkedIn profile and put,
What you need to elicit, if you're able, is a list of things about which she was private. If that's not forthcoming, then we are wrapping things up.
I understand. She was private about her finances.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell the jurors, was she private about her relationship with her husband?
yes.
And can you tell the jurors, did you tell anyone or share this incident with anybody?
My husband,
Your husband?
yes.
Is that the only person that you told?
I believe so.
And so, can you tell the jurors, when you came down this weekend to prepare for your testimony, what did you say to us about this incident?
And again, now it's a prior consistent statement for a statement that we hadn't gotten until this weekend after a year and a half.
You are going to explore, you explore, and we'll see if we need to go any further than that. So,
Right. Let me ask you this. Did you tell Detective Smith about this incident?
No.
And when I met with you last year, did you tell me about the incident?
I don't think so.
Was this weekend when you shared with Mr. Abadi about the incident?
I think it was before that.
Okay.
Yeah, same objection.
Well, I'm not going into what she said. I'm just
Same objection.
okay, overruled based on these particular questions.
Can you tell the jurors, were you interviewed this weekend on Sunday upstairs on the 7th floor about this incident?
Yes.
I mean, I'm sorry, Judge. What
I'm just sorry.
Mr. Harvester.
Are we eliciting prior consistent statements? I mean, what are we doing here? I don't understand the purpose or relevance of these questions.
Okay, I'm not going to explain on the record how I think it's relevant. I see how it's relevant as long as we aren't getting into content. It's whether it was discussed or not in different instances, and not what were the specific words used, was it slightly different this time or that time, that I would prohibit unless the state is seeking to highlight inconsistencies, which doesn't seem to be the approach here.
No. And when you spoke to Mr. Abadi on Sunday on the 7th floor, did you see him taking any notes?
Yes.
Okay. And what day of the week is it today?
Wednesday?
Wednesday.
Sorry.
Just for the record.
Good. Just for the record.
10-10.
You didn't see any arguments or shoving or anything like you described that you had witnessed previously about Austin's finger on that Sunday, did you?
No, I did not.
Can you tell the jurors how long is the drive from the ranch to Reynolds golf course?
20 minutes?
Okay. And as far as you knew, or did you know, the defendant and Diane traveled from the ranch to Reynolds golf course by themselves?
Yes.
And so can you tell the jurors would that have provided them for an opportunity to talk?
Excuse me. That would be speculation. They drove together.
Right, I think
I don't.
Right. You've established a clear understanding of how the couple got to Reynolds Plantation. You can draw your own inferences from that at the appropriate time.
Okay. You told Mr. Harvey that there are places on the ranch where you can ride horses and no one can see you. You remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let me ask you, did you ever have any conversations with Tanner where he told you that the defendant wanted him, Tanner, to take you home?
And again,
Don't answer.
on the scope and outside of Ronaldo. On the scope of class, that was a question that wasn't that. Can we come to sidebar?
No, I'm okay with your objection. I think we need to stay focused. The cross-examination was long, not necessarily so because we had a long direct. But let's focus on areas you want to explore because of the exploration Mr. Harvey had with Ms. Carter.
I understand. Can you tell the jurors, Mr. Harvey asked you questions about Diane having a gun in her car. You remember that?
Yes.
Where does she keep the gun in her car?
It's a little mechanism that is under the right side of the dashboard that it holds the gun, but you can pull it out. It's specially made for a gun.
Right. Did you know her to keep her gun outside of the holster in the car?
No.
How about in a plastic bag?
No.
You told Mr. Harvey yesterday that you didn't call 911 because you didn't know where you were. You remember that?
I did not. Yes. Yes.
And you didn't know where you were?
Not exactly.
But can you tell the jurors, did the defendant say things to you to indicate that he knew where he was?
Again, that would call for speculation.
As worded, I'll allow the question.
No. I knew where I was, but I didn't know where I would be or where I could tell them that I was going to be.
Okay. Well, who gave you directions?
Texted.
Right. And his law office was located where from where in relationship to Piedmont and 12?
On Peachtree, around 10th and 12th.
Okay. What street is Piedmont Hospital located on that you knew about?
Peachtree,
What street is Emory Crawford Long Hospital located on that you knew about?
Peachtree.
Yesterday, you told Mr. Harvey that you didn't know what the noise was when the gun went off. You remember that?
Not initially.
Okay.
Yes, I remember that.
Okay. How many times do you think you've heard a gun go off?
Hundreds and hundreds.
Okay. And what did you tell Mr. Harvey yesterday your first thought was when you heard the gun?
That there was an explosion somewhere.
Now, you have described or shown and demonstrated for the jurors that the position that the gun was in relationship to the bag. Can you tell the jurors, based on what you saw, was the gun inside the bag or outside the bag when you saw it in Mr. McIver's hands?
Halfway inside and halfway outside. I couldn't see the entire gun.
Early on, your questioning, Mr. Harvey asked you about a horse. Remember that?
Yes.
What's your horse's name?
Savannah.
Do you still have it?
No.
What happened to it?
She was sold.
She was sold.
Yes.
By whom?
Tex, I guess.
No, when you move to strike, ask for cautionary instruction. She doesn't know.
If you don't know, you need to say you don't know.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, then any reference to Mr. McIver, you all should disregard. The testimony was about the horse being sold, but Mr. Carter doesn't know who did the selling.
Where was the horse the last time you saw it?
On the ranch.
On the ranch. And who had control of the ranch?
Well,
Tex.
Again, it would be speculation.
I'll allow the question.
Okay. Can you tell the jurors when is the last time that you spoke with the defendant at all?
Probably the day that it was on the telephone when I was talking to him about, there was a piece of Diane's clothing that I wore all the time that I wanted. And that's
And
then,
the content wasn't that for it. Was when was the last time?
I don't know when it was.
Okay.
You got an extra question there, Mr. Harvey.
Yeah. Was it before or after the estate sale, the very first estate sale, when her items were being sold?
Oh, it was right. It was during that time because the cape was part of the estate sale.
Because of what was the part?
The cape.
The cake?
The cape.
And you talked to the defendant about that particular article of clothing, it was the cape.
I did, yes.
And what did you tell him about the cape?
It had some meaning behind it, and I would like to have it.
Was that the only article of clothing that you talked to, or anything that belonged to Diane McIver that you talked to him about, that you wanted?
Yes.
And can you tell the jurors, what did he say to you when you asked him for the cape?
He said that the estate people had gotten everything, and that even if his sister wanted something, that he couldn't get it.
So did you get the cape?
No, I did not.
Now, in the yesterday, I think you told us that the state of your feelings towards the defendant was you were fond of him.
Yes.
That was before the shooting.
Yes.
Is the state of your feelings toward the defendant the same today?
No.
And can you explain why not?
No, I don't get that.
What's the... All right, okay.
Let me make sure I understand one area that you talked to Mr. Harvey about yesterday, and that is when you were picked up at the hospital by Investigator Ricker and the other officer. You remember that?
Yes.
Lots of questions from Mr. Harvey yesterday about whether or not you talked to them about the facts and circumstances of the shooting while you were inside the car.
Correct.
And did you?
No.
Okay. Did you talk to them in the hospital when they first picked you up about any of the facts and circumstances of the shooting?
I did not.
When was the first time that you would have spoken to them with respect to any details regarding the facts and circumstances of the shooting?
As we were sitting in the table in that interview room that I was in for hours.
How long did you speak to the investigators the first time you spoke to them in that room?
Maybe 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Ms. Carter. That's all my regrets.
Okay. Mr. Harvey, I don't typically allow recross, but there were a couple of areas explored here that I think it's appropriate for you to explore on recross, should you choose to do so. Your thoughts?
There are a number of areas I think that are ripe for recross. And I would ask the court, given the extensive nature of the reground, that I be allowed to do recross about areas that frankly weren't raised in direct, but that were expanded on
those may be the ones I have in mind, so why don't you get going, but I'm just letting you know, I may say, that's not an area we need more exploration on, you'll be able to note your objection, but I didn't want you to feel surprised by that. Recross is atypical, but it here I think is appropriate. So, proceed, please.
Anticipate my objections.
I always do.
Please, thank you. Can you see me okay here?
Yes, I can.
Skinny cows.
Yes.
What are skinny cows?
Ice cream,
What are cheese nips?
crackers.
And some of the things you told us about, and you told to Mr. Rucker, you know, any of the times that Diane would get onto Tex
Yes.
basically were about food. Skinny cows, that's what you told Darren Smith on 9/26 of 2016, right?
Yes.
Okay. You also mentioned cheese nips.
Yes.
Okay. So when you were talking about, boy, Diane got on Tex, said, Tex, what happened to the skinny cows, right?
Yes.
And he would say, well, darling, I don't know who ate that box of skinny cows.
Yes.
Well, darling, I mean, he would just kind of say, I don't know how those cheese nips disappeared.
Yes.
I don't know how those skinny cows disappeared.
Yes.
And he, Tex, would always take that in stride. There was never an argument. He never said, you know, get off my case. Stop bugging me. Right?
He did not say anything.
Right. He was always responsive to her chiding him about weight, correct? That's what she
Yes.
would be doing. She'd be chiding him. She chided you.
She did.
Okay. And it was irritating to you, correct?
Extremely.
All right. But Tex, from everything you saw, took it in stride, didn't he?
Well, Judge, I want to object.
I don't know.
She doesn't know how.
Well, you don't know?
She just said, I don't know.
And I was questioning that
Okay.
in disbelief.
Well, it's not your role to say something like that or intone in that way. So,
Okay, I got it. We went with skinny cows and cheese nips. I guess I also understand that one of the things that you told us about was this finger burning incident, correct?
Yes.
That was something that didn't come up in your interviews with anybody on 9/26, the first day, with the APD officers, with Darren Smith, with anybody else. You
Yes.
didn't tell them about that, but you know, you did indeed at one point when you were talking about the skinny cows. Do you remember telling Darren Smith they got in a room one night, they were both drinking drunk, and I was not at the time out at the ranch one time because my godson had burned his finger, and I was trying to take good care of it. And but they didn't argue.
It was an argument.
It was wasn't an argument, right?
That was an argument. I was so upset about it that I called my husband.
But on the night of 9/26 of 2016, when you started to mention that, you said, but they didn't argue.
No, they did not that
Okay.
night.
And it was so insignificant at that particular time, and it was so insignificant in September of 2016, in February of 2017, and when you gave multiple statements and multiple interviews with Mr. Rucker and otherwise, it was so insignificant that you never mentioned it. Correct? You never mentioned it.
I did not mention it. Not because it wasn't insignificant.
Well, if it was, she said it. She did.
Well, stop. Were you done?
It was not because it was not insignificant.
Okay. Then she's done, and you'll follow up.
Great. It was so important. It was so important that you wanted to make sure he knew about it. He, Mr. Rucker. Right? It was so important that you wanted to let him know about it. But it didn't come out till Sunday.
Judge, this is just testimony.
Well,
Did it?
I think it came out before Sunday, but I did talk about it on Sunday.
Right. When you started to talk about it to Detective Smith and said, but they didn't argue. That's how significant it wasn't, especially when he said, is there anything else that's important that you didn't tell us? You said no. Right?
Right.
One of the important things that you did tell Detective Smith on that date was that when asked, how did Tex seem, you specifically said, in shock and feeling like horrible. You remember that?
Yes.
Okay. So when first asked about his demeanor and first asked about how he was responding, he was in shock. That's exactly what you said. When you were describing what you saw in the back seat as Mr. McIver had the weapon that you just demonstrated again. Put it in your right hand this time?
That was the first time I'd ever demonstrated that.
You demonstrated when you were sitting in the seats, correct?
I didn't.
Objection, Judge. Mischaracterizes the evidence.
he's just asking the question, whether you're referring to when the four chairs were in here. I
Yes.
understood it to be, did you not demonstrate? And she's going to answer that.
Okay.
I didn't have the gun in my hand then,
No, but you
Mr.
demonstrated how you were telling the jurors how it was held, correct?
Correct.
Okay. When you first met with Mr. Rucker, you know, and actually Ms. Donikowski, you said, do you recall saying he was moving his hand, the gun would have been in his left hand. You remember saying that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember talking about the statement you told us about this morning for the first time after being here for a couple of days? You know I can't go to jail?
That was the first time I'd been asked that question.
The entire day that Mr. Rucker was there, he didn't ask you about that, correct?
Since we've been here the last 3
Since
days?
your testimony started.
No,
He didn't
I've not
ask
been
you
asked
the
that
entire
question.
day. We didn't even mention it yesterday, correct?
No.
So today is the first time we've heard that here, correct?
Correct.
But you know, you told them about that before. You said that night in the emergency room, he looked at me and he says, you know, I can't go to jail, which was the whole claustrophobic kind of thing. You remember telling him that?
Yes.
Who's them?
Whoever was asking the questions at that particular time, I actually don't know who was asking.
But is it a DA interview or a law
Yes.
enforcement interview?
It's a DA.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So that reference was in the context of the whole claustrophobic thing. That's what you said before.
Yes.
And when you described the relationship between Tex and Diane, you described the relationship as one in which your observations were that Diane was the dominant figure in the relationship, correct?
Yes.
Because it was Tex that was always the courtly Southern gentleman responding to Diane's irritating and annoying comments with courtliness.
Yes.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Ladies and gentlemen, I suppose it is theoretically possible that there has been some question not asked of Ms. Carter, and so it is appropriate that I turn to you all to say if you have any questions that you've written down over the past 2.5 days, please send them to your left. Deputy Kane will collect them, and we will go from there. Thank you. So what I'm going to propose is that we take our morning break. That'll give you guys a chance to refresh and us a chance to go through this deck that just got handed to me, so that when we get you back in here, we'll see if there are, in fact, any more questions for Ms. Carter. So please, don't talk about the case. Enjoy your break, and we'll get you back in here in about 10 minutes. Thank you so much.
All rise for the jury.
Ms. Carter, you can be at ease. Just don't get too far away, because in about 10 minutes we'll get you back. Ms. Price, you can take your break now too. Work with this and these folks.
All right, you may be seated.
Pardon me?
He's an open court. You're just numbering, right?
Yeah, and then I'm going to let you look at them during the break. Yeah. We're going to bring the jurors in a moment. Given the length of Ms. Carter's testimony, they have compiled a few questions, and Mr. Harvey has shared with me that he objects to all of the questions that I've indicated I'll ask. He has, of course, his standing objection, and I'm not addressing that now, but he has trying to distinguish it. He believes that these are all questions that go into areas that have already been explored, which shouldn't surprise anyone. They just may fall into some of those interstitial areas that the two attorneys didn't cover in their hours and hours and hours of questioning. I will ask the questions, but Mr. Harvey's concerns are preserved for the record. Let's bring the jurors in, please.
All rise for the jury. Jury's all present and accounted for, Your Honor.
Thank you, Deputy King. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for your patience. Had a few questions we had to work through. What I'm going to start with is I'm going to ask some technically proficient member of the prosecution to replay 2 videos, and let's get the exhibit numbers correct. Are these all the same exhibit, or are they different exhibits because they're different cameras?
They'll be both from State's Exhibit 233.
Okay, from 233 there is a video that was represented to show the intersection of 10th and Piedmont.
looking southbound on Piedmont as the traffic approaches the camera. And if we could start with that one, and then we'll play the video from 12th and Piedmont, which is faced northbound, so you see traffic moving away from the camera as it moves up Piedmont.
Okay, and for the record, we haven't moved to the timestamp on State's Exhibit 233 of 22:03 and 38 seconds.
All right, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to move it to the next intersection. And just for the record, I'm going to start the 12th Street intersection playing at 22:04 and 2 seconds.
Ms. Carter,
Yes, sir.
are you right-handed or left-handed?
I'm right-handed.
That was easy. Do you know what vehicle the McIvers used to get from the ranch to golf on the Sunday that we've been talking to you about?
I would assume that it.
Don't assume.
Okay.
If you know,
I
tell
don't-
us
I
what it
really-
is. If you don't know, you don't
I
know.
don't know because I didn't see them leave and I didn't see them come back.
Okay. You described during your testimony observing that Yeti being passed back and forth.
Yes.
Had something like that ever happened before when you were in the King Ranch with the McIvers?
There would be to-go roadies, to-go drinks.
Okay. Have you ever been in a vehicle with Mr. McIver other than the incident we've been talking to you about in which he's asked for a gun to be handed to him?
No. Can y'all hear me?
You were, pardon me?
I didn't know if I was supposed to be talking into the microphone.
As long as the court reporter, well, I want to make sure the jurors can hear you too, so
Okay.
I'll be able to hear you if you're
Okay.
talking to the microphone, so you can.
Okay.
I won't feel it rude if you're not looking at me while I ask the question.
Okay.
You were asked about this time when you and Ms. McIver distance each other.
Yes.
I'm not asking that well, but because of drinking.
Yes.
Ms. McIver distanced herself from you.
Yes.
Can you tell the jurors how it was that you once again became involved in Ms. McIver and Mr. McIver's life?
Yes. I thought I was going to get a divorce from my husband. And there were always rumors kind of
Well,
float.
I don't want you to get into rumors,
Okay.
but what something happened in your life that
Yes.
caused you to reach out to Ms. McIver or vice versa?
Yes, I would hear, things, and so I called her up to tell her so that she could get it from the horse's mouth. And
About what was going on in your personal
in my
life?
life,
Okay. And that reopened the doors?
yes.
Okay. You talked about doing some decorating work at the ranch and at least one of Mr. McIver's law offices, and you didn't move offices with Christian Phillips. Did you get paid for any of that decorating work?
At the ranch I did.
Is there any reason why you didn't play golf with the McIvers that Sunday?
I used to play golf with Diane. I wasn't very good at it, and I really like riding horses, so I'd rather be out there on the horses.
Okay. Turning to the King Ranch, that Ford Expedition,
Right?
do you know if it had a hands-free Bluetooth calling feature?
I do not know if it did. I don't know if it did.
Okay. Do you know if it had a built-in navigation system?
No, I don't know that.
Did you drive the King Ranch earlier that day on Sunday?
I did.
Did you have reason to open the center console that day?
No, I did not.
Can you explain to the jury the sound that you heard in the car before the boom, the explosion?
I believe Diane was sitting there. I heard click, 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 and it was Diane playing with the door locks.
Did you hear Mr. McIver ever say to Ms. McIver while you were driving them to the hospital that what happened was an accident?
No.
Did you end up meeting with the chaplain while you were at Emory University Hospital?
I did.
And why was it that did you ask for the chaplain?
I did.
Why did you ask for the chaplain?
I had wanted to pray initially the first time that they had asked me if I wanted to see a chaplain, and Tex had said no, and so when they asked me to go and wait in the other waiting room, I saw one of the security guys there that was in uniform, and I asked him if he would find or could find the chaplain for me so that I could have somebody to pray with.
When you saw Mr. Maples at Emory University Hospital, do you recall how he was dressed?
Casually. I don't remember exactly what he had on, but he was not wearing a suit.
Okay. Can you explain to the jurors why it was that you stayed with Ms. Calhoun for those several days at the condominium complex after Ms. McIver passed?
Well, I knew on Tuesday that Billy and Jay were going to come over and talk with us, and it was a closer proximity there. There were other people coming in and out, and we were talking about a memorial service or details. And Janie's husband was out of town, and she had become really close to Diane, and I was extremely fond of Janie, and I knew that we could just sit around and talk about Diane and just be, do the comforting girl talk kind of thing. My
So
husband,
what caused you at the end of your stay to leave? Why did your stay come to a close?
I needed to go to work and needed to go home.
Explain to the jurors why you took from Mr. McIver the notes he was jotting down when he was asking you to tell him what you remembered about what happened in the car.
Because I knew that those were my thoughts, and I knew from my general knowledge, and I'd been told by the detective.
Stop about
Okay.
what detectives told you.
Okay.
Okay. Tell the jurors why you went to Austin Schwall's flag football game, the one that you talked to them about.
I went for Austin. Austin was traumatized too, just like I was, and I really went to see Austin. Ava was supposed to go with me that day, and they were so fond of each other. It was adorable. And she had strep throat, so she couldn't go. And
I think this is beyond the scope.
Okay, you can keep going.
so I went, and I knew that I was going to see Tex there.
I just want to know why you went.
why I
So you
went,
can
okay.
explain that. Tell the jurors what you recall as to when you first learned about Mr. McIver's sleep disorder.
That seems like it was a couple of years ago.
Were you aware as to whether or not Ms. McIver ever loaned Mr. McIver any money?
No,
Had you ever seen Mr. McIver break down or cry in any situation ever before?
no.
Mr. Rucker, any follow-up based on those areas of inquiry?
Could you just put into some kind of time frame for us the work you did at the saloon where you were paid? Who paid you?
Diane.
And can you put into context when did that occur?
Oh, well, I know it was finished by 2005, so it was a year long, and my stuff involved picking out furniture, picking out paint colors. I painted the saloon part of that facility was 30 by 35 feet, and I don't know how tall the ceilings were tall, and I painted the entire saloon with hired a team of, one guy was a professional painter that were relatives of Javier. They were Mexican, and I taught them how to faux finish to make this.
And I'm sorry,
Okay.
the question was when?
When?
It was before the wedding
Yes,
in 2005.
yes.
Mr. Hart?
I want to make sure that I understand correctly that as soon as you heard the boom, soon thereafter, very soon thereafter, before you started moving, you put the emergency lights on, the emergency lights were blinking, and you were honking, correct?
I was honking and blinking the bright lights. I didn't get the emergency blinkers on immediately. I couldn't find them.
Okay. And then you moved, did you move to the right and go forward?
No, I went straight.
Okay. And the car got out of your way, correct?
Yes.
Okay. When you were sitting there, the noise that you heard was the clicking, Diane clicking the lock up and down, correct?
Yes.
All right. And you're sure that the noise that you heard was the clicking because you turned to Diane and said, "What are you doing?"
Yes.
Right? And she said, "I'm making sure the door's locked."
Yes.
Right. So there's no question in your mind that the click, click, click that you heard was her, Diane, and you described it previously like she's a 3-year-old sitting there punching the buttons on the door, right? You remember saying that?
Yes.
Okay, so you're sure that that was the click, click, click that you heard? And in fact, you then locked your own door and said,
I locked all of them because they were all unlocked.
and you went like there. That's
Yes, they're locked now.
Okay. Now, I think you indicated to us that Tex said no to the chaplain. He said no, didn't he? I hope we don't need that, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Carter, thank you so much. I would walk slowly but purposefully out of the courtroom. Don't make eye contact with any of these lawyers, and they may not make you fun. Thank you for your time. Any other witnesses?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get going.
Yep. State calls Tom Carter.
Okay. Who else do you have out there?
He'll be done in like 20 seconds.
Okay. So quick was the right word?
Yes.
Mr. Carter will be here shortly.
Can you raise your right hand for me? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give to the court is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, you may be seated. For the purpose of the court, please state your name and spell it, and speak loudly, please.
Tom Carter, Tomcarter.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I think your voice is loud enough that everybody can hear it, but let's make sure that you try to keep it up so that everybody in the courtroom can hear what you have to say. Okay. Can you introduce yourself to the jurors by restating your name and telling them how old you are?
Tom Carter, I'm 55 years old.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors how are you currently employed?
I work at a motorcycle dealership in Buford.
Okay. And can you tell them what is your relationship to Patricia Carter?
She's my wife.
Okay. And how long have you guys been married?
Coming up on 18 years.
Okay.
That's a good answer. We heard the same answer from her. As Ernestine.
I wanted to talk with you a little bit and ask you about your relationships with Diane McIver and also the defendant in this case, Claude McIver. Okay.
Okay.
Can you tell the jurors between Diane McIver and Claude McIver, who did you meet first?
I've known Diane. I did know her for almost 30 years.
And how would you describe your relationship with her?
Very friendly. Turn my phone off. Sorry, y'all.
Okay. All right. Let me know when you're ready.
Okay.
All right. And let me ask you this. How would you describe your relationship with the defendant, Claude McIver?
It was friendly.
Okay. When did you meet him?
Sometime in the year 2000.
Okay. Do you remember the occasion under which you met him?
Not really. Some social event.
Okay. And over the course of those years, from 2000 until, say, September of 2016, about how many times do you think you would have maybe talked with him or socialized with him or been in his company?
Too many times to count.
Okay. Now, in all of those occasions, when you would speak with him, in your opinion, do you think you recognize his voice when you hear it?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I can hear you.
I would, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, there was just some noise back here, I just couldn't hear you. And can you tell the jurors, the Putnam County Ranch, have you ever been there before?
Numerous times.
Okay, any idea about how many?
I couldn't put a number on it.
Okay. Have you ever talked to the defendant about how he feels about that ranch?
Not specifically, no.
Okay. And when you have gone to the ranch, can you tell the jurors kind of what's been the interaction between you and Diane and the defendant?
No, we're all good friends. We spend a lot of time together, doing the things we do out there, which is swimming, riding horses, riding four-wheelers, shooting guns. It's a very relaxing time.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, in times when you have been there, or a specific time, have you ever heard the defendant make any statements to you about his wealth?
Yeah, I heard him tell me once or twice.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors what has he said to you about his wealth?
He just said, I'm rich as shit.
And he used those words exactly?
Yes, he did.
Do you know when he would have said that to you?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. Sometime in the last 10 years.
Do you know where you were when he said that to you?
Yeah, we're just at the ranch overlooking the property.
Now, in all those times that you've been in their company, can you tell the jurors, have you ever personally witnessed any arguments or any fights or anything like that between them?
No.
Okay. Would you, have you ever witnessed Diane McIver ever say getting on the defendant about anything?
Yeah, she used to, about his weight.
Okay. And how would you kind of describe to the jurors who weren't there when this occurred, this getting on him about his weight?
Oh, just, whenever you want to get some Cheez-Its or something to eat, after we'd already had dinner. Just telling Tex, you don't need to be eating this, you don't need to be eating these Cheez-Its,
Mm-hmm. Did you say it nice and soft like that?
No. It wasn't like in a harsh tone. It's more like in a, not a humorous way, but not a harsh tone either.
What do you mean, not in a humorous way?
Well, we all kid each other when we're out there. It's all part of the fun.
And is that the way it appeared to you, that it was just fun when she would get on him like that?
Well, yes and no. It was humorous, but it was also obviously, she would like for him to not be eating.
Okay. How would he respond?
He'd always shrug it off,
Mm-hmm.
Come on, darling, I like my Cheez-Its, or something along those lines.
Right. And how often would you see this?
Probably like every Saturday night.
And when this would occur, did you kind of stick around to see the ending of it all?
Well, yeah, we'd be downstairs watching television, watching football late night or whatever.
And over the course of these years, how long do you think you've kind of seen this kind of interaction between them?
How many times?
How long? If it happens every Saturday night, for how long?
Years.
Years. Do you have an opinion about who was more dominant in the marriage?
I'd say Diane. She just had that, larger than life personality and very outgoing.
Let's go with the question.
Okay. You would say Diane was more dominant in the marriage?
I would.
Okay. And is it because of what you personally observed
Yes.
with respect to the interactions between the two of them?
Yes.
Okay. Now, although you all were close friends, can you tell the jurors, Did Diane discuss with you her personal finances?
No.
Was she ever confide in you about any personal things going on between she and Claude McIver?
No.
Now, I want to kind of focus your attention to the weekend of September the 23rd through September the 25th. And I want to ask you, where were you that weekend?
I was in Memphis and Oxford for a football game.
Okay. And what football game is that?
Georgia Ole Miss.
Georgia Ole Miss. You actually went to the game? Yes?
I did.
Did you go alone?
No, with a bunch of friends.
Okay. And can you tell the jury, when did you make plans to go to the game?
Oh, I don't know, a month or two before.
Okay. And did you share that with your wife, Danny Jo? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. And so what did you understand the plan was for you that weekend, and what did you understand the plan was for Danny Jo that weekend?
I was going to go to the football game, and she was going to go to the ranch.
And did you know who she would be going to the ranch with?
Diane and Tex. Beyond that, I didn't know.
Okay. Now, on the occasions when you have gone to the ranch, how would you get to the ranch?
Danny and I would go together.
You and Danny would go together?
Yeah.
You would drive your own vehicle?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember an occasion ever where you would have gone down to the ranch in the same vehicle with the McIvers?
No.
So did you actually attend the football game there in Oxford?
Yes.
How'd the dogs do?
We got smoked.
Smoked. That was a bad game, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so can you tell the jurors, when did you come back?
We came back Sunday afternoon.
And when you got back on Sunday afternoon, where did you go?
Went home.
And your home generally, without giving us the street address or anything, is located where in Metro Atlanta?
It's in Dunwoody.
In Dunwoody. And you live there with your wife? You recall about what time it was when you got home?
I don't. It was late Sunday afternoon.
And can you tell the jury, over the weekend, had you had the opportunity to communicate with your wife?
I did. I recall there's something funky going on with her phone, so I think I sent her a text over the weekend on Sunday that I'd be home late Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you say something funky was going on with her phone, what do you mean?
I don't think I could call her on her cell phone, but it was receiving texts.
Okay. So can you tell the jurors, how did you all travel to Memphis and to Oxford?
We all piled in a van.
Piled in the van? And how'd you travel back?
Same way.
So can you tell the jurors, when you got back late Sunday afternoon, how were you feeling?
Tired.
So what did you do?
I just hung out at home, had dinner, and watched some NFL, and just had a quiet evening at home.
Okay. Now, can you tell the jurors, sometime late night Sunday or early morning Monday, did you become aware that something had happened with respect to the McIvers and Danny Jo?
Yes. I believe I got a text from Danny saying that there had been an accident.
Okay. And then what did you do?
I tried to call her and I couldn't get her. I assumed it was a car accident.
It's okay. Based on what she said in the text message, you had some thoughts. Yes?
I did.
Okay. And based on those thoughts, what did you do?
Well, I tried calling her to find out what had happened.
Okay. Were you able to actually speak with her?
No.
Okay. So what happened next?
I just waited. I figured she would contact me as soon as she could.
Okay. And do you know what time it was when you received that text message?
You know, I couldn't give you an exact time, but I would say sometime around 10:30, something like that.
Is that 10:30 p.m. on Sunday night?
Yes.
Now, were you ever contacted by anyone else about that incident after 10:30 p.m.?
No.
Okay. So, did you stay at home the rest of the night?
I did.
Okay. Did you ever leave your home early morning hours of Monday, September the 26th? Did you leave your home?
Sunday night?
Monday morning, early September 26th.
I did.
After midnight.
I did.
Okay. Do you know what time it was when you left your home?
Sometime after 1:30,
And why did you leave your home?
because I got a phone call from Tex.
And can you tell the jurors, what did he say?
He said, Tommy Lee,
So what?
Tommy Lee. We all had nicknames. That's what they called me. There's been an accident. Diane is dead. I need you to come to the hospital immediately.
And did he tell you what hospital to come to?
He did.
What hospital did he say?
It was Emory.
And so can you tell the jurors, at that time you received a phone call from the defendant, what modes of transportation did you have available to you at that time?
I only had my motorcycle.
And you've been riding motorcycles for a while?
Long time.
Long time. What kind of bike was this that you had?
It was a BMW at the time.
And so what did you do?
I got on my bike and I drove down to the condo. I had a key to Danny's car. I got in the car and I drove to Emory.
And why did you go get Danny Joe's car from the condo?
I just didn't feel comfortable. I knew that at some point I'd have to drive her, and so I needed to have a car.
Okay. And so after you got Danny Joe's car, what did you do?
I went to the hospital.
Okay. And when you got to the hospital, what happened?
I went to the emergency room and I asked, where could I find Tex McIver?
Okay. And do you know about what time it was when you got to the hospital?
Oh gosh, maybe 2:30.
A.m.?
Yes.
Okay. This is stage 348. Sorry, as soon as we convert it over, I'll show you a couple of photos. All right, there we go. Is that the condominium that you went to?
It is.
And fair to say, how many times do you think you've been to that condominium?
Numerous.
And this is States 263. You recognize that guy?
Barely.
Barely. Is that the way you looked at or about the time of this incident?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And, man, what happened to all the hair?
Danny never really cared for it that way, so it's
Okay.
time for a change.
Okay. So when you got to the emergency room, did you come through what area, how did you get into the emergency room?
I went to the parking area for the emergency room and then walked up to the front desk.
You said you went to the parking
Deck.
deck, okay.
Right. You know what? I may have valeted. I can't remember.
Okay. But once you got inside that emergency room area and you asked for Mr. McIver, what happened next?
They told me to go across the walkway to the security area, which is a different part of the building, which I did. And I think I called Tex at that point, and he said he would send somebody down to get me.
Okay. And did someone come down to get you?
Yes,
And who was it?
Steve Maples.
Now, had you come to be acquainted with Steve Maples? I mean, did you know him?
Not before that night.
Not before that night. And all of the times that you had gone out to the ranch, you had not seen him out there four-wheeling and
No.
shooting guns and riding horses?
No.
So what happened when Steve Maples came to get you?
We went up the elevator, I think to the 4th floor. There was like a chapel area.
And so what did you do then?
I just walked up to Tex and that's when he told me in brief terms what had happened.
Okay. And as you sit here today, do you remember what he told you happened?
I do.
And can you tell the jurors exactly what the defendant told you happened the first time you saw him that night?
He told me they were on the way back to the ranch, and they ran into some traffic downtown, and they got off an exit, and he felt like they were in a dangerous area, and that they handed back his gun. And he said at some point he fell asleep, and then the damn thing just went off. It's very brief. That's what he said.
Now, did he say anything to you during that first encounter with him when he was telling you what happened? Anything about the damn thing just went off after we hit a bump?
No.
Did he ever mention anything to you about a bump?
No.
With respect to the dangerous area, did he say anything to you during that first exchange about people who appeared to be homeless approaching the car?
No.
Or did he tell you anything about any protests or protesters approaching the car?
No.
Or even seeing any out there?
No. He only said what I just said.
Okay. Do you recall whether or not he told you what area of town he was in when the damn thing just went off?
He just said a dangerous part.
Okay. Now, at the time that the defendant was telling you these things, who was present?
Just the three of us, myself, Tex, and Steve Maples.
And can you tell the jurors Do you remember how Mr. Maples was dressed?
My best recollection is he had like a sport coat and slacks on.
Do you recall whether or not Mr. Maples had a notepad and a pen?
He did.
And do you recall him taking notes?
I do.
So can you tell the jury, while you were on the fourth floor, well, strike that. Let me ask you a better question. Did you learn that Diane McIver had not survived her injuries?
Yes.
And did you learn that before you got to the hospital or after you got to the hospital?
Before.
Okay. So while you were on the fourth floor, how long did you remain up there?
Very briefly, just a moment or two.
And then what happened?
We went downstairs to the waiting area in the emergency room.
Okay. And then what happened?
We waited.
Okay. How long did you wait?
I don't know, an hour or so.
Okay. And who was present in that waiting area in the lobby for that hour or so?
That was just the three of us.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, during that time frame, what was the demeanor of the defendant? During that hour, can you tell the jury, like what was going on down in the lobby area with the three of you?
Nothing of any significance. It was just idle talk, conversation.
Okay. Do you remember any of the subject matters that were discussed?
Tex told me that Steve was a Vietnam vet, so we talked a little bit about Vietnam.
Talked about Vietnam. How about Diane?
No.
No. Now, can you tell the jury, during that hour, did the defendant appear to be laboring under any kind of state of anxiety?
Don't answer the question.
Okay.
Ask a better question?
Yeah.
To use your phrase?
Yeah, that's the right question.
Strike that. I'm going to ask a better question.
Okay. How would you describe the way the
Hold on a
defendant?
second. Mr. Carter has whipped through that first bottle of water. And it's time for a second one.
Just in your opinion, just if you, well, actually not even your opinion, if you would just describe to the jurors the way he appeared to you during the time you were in the lobby there, just making idle chit chat.
Again, I would say he's very calm.
Okay. Now, can you tell the jury, after about an hour or so, well, track that. Let me ask you another question. Did you know where Danny Joe was?
I did not.
Okay. Can you tell the jury, was there any attempt to try to find out where she was?
Yes.
And what attempt was made to find out where she was?
We made phone calls.
Who made phone calls?
I did. I can't remember if they did or not.
Okay. And at some point in time, did you come to learn where Danny Joe was?
Yes.
Okay. And so, where did you learn she was?
She was with the police downtown.
And how did you find out that she was with the police downtown?
I believe she called me and left me a message on my cell phone.
And then you checked your messages?
I
Yes.
tried. Yes.
Okay. And did you ever call her back? Were you ever able to speak with her while she was downtown?
I did call her back, but she had called from a detective's phone number, and he didn't answer, so I left a message to call me.
Okay. And up until that time, do you know whether or not Mr. Maples or the defendant knew where Danny Joe was? Okay. Because you didn't know.
No.
So after learning that she was at the police station, what did you do?
Well, I tried calling her.
Okay. Did you eventually reach her?
Eventually.
Do you have any idea what time it was when you talked to your wife?
You know, I really don't. If I had to guess, you know, it was somewhere between 3 and 3.
Mr. Harvey doesn't want you to guess, but do you have a way of estimating at all? If you don't, you know, it's okay.
Somewhere between 3 and 3:30, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay. And so did you stay at the hospital or did you leave the hospital?
Well, after I spoke to her, I wanted to go pick her up.
And did you?
I did.
And so when you left the hospital, who was still there?
Steve and Tex.
Okay. And do you know how long it took you to get down to the police station?
Maybe 20 minutes, 25.
Okay. And when you arrived at the police station, were you able to see your wife?
Yes.
And when you arrived there 20 or 25 minutes later, after you left the hospital, were you able to leave the police station immediately with your wife?
Yes.
Okay. And so where did you go?
We went directly back to Emory.
Now, can you tell the jurors, when you picked up your wife, how would you describe her demeanor?
She was in shock. Just couldn't believe what had happened.
And when you say shock, what do you mean by shock? How do you describe what you saw?
I would say she was just numb from the pain of seeing her best friend killed.
When you looked at her face, could you tell whether or not she had been crying or anything?
Yes.
How could you tell?
You know, the eyes are red, cheeks are swollen, just, you could tell.
In all the years you all have been married, had you ever seen her like that before?
No.
Now, on the car ride from the police station back to the hospital, did you make any stops?
We did not.
Was there any conversation about what actually occurred on the inside of the SUV?
Yes, she told me what had happened.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, did she give you details about what happened?
Yes.
Can you tell the jurors, what did she say?
And again, the purpose here is
Right, so maybe the objection is hearsay, and then you would tell me why it's not hearsay.
that is one of the objections.
So instead of making us guess, why don't you tell us what the objections are, besides hearsay? I guess, well, what else?
It would also be falsehood.
It could be. So,
I will direct with a better question. How about that? A better
I'll
question.
give you some leeway to direct with a better question, so
Yeah.
that we can try to navigate these waters.
Did she give you any details about where the shooting would have occurred?
She did.
Okay. And while you all were leaving the police station, headed back to the hospital, did she show you? Did you all drive the route?
No.
Okay. Did she share details with you about who actually was holding the gun at the time it went off?
Yes.
In the details that she shared with you, did she ever mention the car going over a bump before the gun discharged?
No.
Did you?
That would call for a hearsay response. Only way he knows that is hearsay.
No, the only way he knows is because he's saying Miss Carter told him. I'm working through, just thinking now.
So, same objection, who just tried
Okay.
She's testified she's been subject to cross-examination, and the circumstances of how the gun went off has been fully explored by both sides.
Okay. That's not, doesn't make it not hearsay. Let me just keep thinking. I'll allow.
Okay. I think your response to my question was no, right? She never told you that the gun discharged after the car ran over a bump.
She did not.
Okay. Now, when you got to the hospital, can you tell the jurors what did you see, or who was there,
Tex and Steve were there.
and where were they?
In the emergency room waiting area.
Is that the same area they were in when you left them?
Yes.
And can you tell the jury what happened when you arrived?
We just all sat down in the waiting area.
Okay. All four of you were sitting in the waiting area.
Yes.
And is that waiting area kind of near where the front desk is when you come through the glass double doors
It
into the
is.
emergency room?
Yes.
And while you all were sitting there, the four of you in the waiting area, were there conversations going on in the group?
Yeah, I don't remember. I'm sure there was.
Okay. Do you recall you guys just sitting there kind of silently, or?
Yes, we were all kind of sitting next to each other.
Do you remember anything in particular that was discussed?
Just said no.
No.
You have to ask and answer.
Okay. How long did you sit there?
I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 minutes.
Okay. And for the whole 15 to 20 minutes, nothing was said that you can recall?
Nothing in regards to what had happened to Diane, no.
Okay. But does that mean that there were conversations?
Again,
Yes.
answer.
Well, but he just gave a different answer than before. So overruled.
After 15 minutes or so, what happened?
Tex went into the anxiety protocol with the hospital emergency room.
Where did you see him go?
Where?
Yes. Do you know where he went? You say anxiety
Yeah.
protocol.
Yes, you could see where it was.
Okay, where was it?
In a room with a nurse or a doctor.
Okay. And how long did he stay in this? And what do you mean by anxiety protocol?
That's just what I understood that it was. You're suffering from anxiety, they can treat you for it at the emergency room.
While you were sitting there in the lobby area for those 15 minutes or so, did the defendant say anything to you like, hey, I'm having a panic attack or an anxiety attack or anything like that?
No.
So describe for the jurors, how did he appear to you?
He appeared to be, again, calm.
Did you ever ask him, say, hey, why are you going through anxiety protocol? Because you look and appear to be calm.
No, I did not.
And it's fair to say you don't have any medical training in that area, right?
I don't.
How long did he remain with the nurses and doctors?
Oh gosh, maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour.
And then what happened?
We went home.
And who went home?
We all did. We got in my car, or Danny's car, and I drove. And I drove them to the condo.
Okay. And what kind of car did Danny have at the time?
It's a Kia Optima.
And so what time do you believe or you think that you would have arrived at the condo?
By this time, it was probably close to 6 o'clock in the morning.
And do you know where Mr. Maples went? Do you know?
Yeah, he had to be in court that morning.
Okay. So when you got to the condo, did your wife stay there?
Yes,
And where did you go?
I went home.
Now, did you come back to the condo at any time during that Monday, September 26th?
No,
How about Tuesday, September 27th?
I don't think so.
Do you recall when you would have come back to the condo, if at all?
Yes, I had to drive her to go to work because she was in such a distraught state. She didn't feel confident driving.
Did you actually come inside the building?
I did.
And did you actually go up to the 15th floor to the condominium to get your wife?
I did.
And what condominium did you go to pick up your wife?
Tex and Diane's condo.
She was there?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, she was there? She was at Tex and Diane's
Danny was
condo?
there, yeah.
Okay. Was there anyone else there that you can recall?
Tex was there.
Anybody else?
Not that I can recall.
Do you remember what day of the week this might have been?
Maybe a Wednesday.
Maybe Wednesday? And can you tell the jury when you got there, was there any conversation between or amongst the three of you?
Yeah.
Okay. When you arrived at the condo, did you say anything?
Not other than, just standard greeting.
Okay. And when you got to the condo, did you have a key to get in or were you let in?
No, they had let me in.
And who let you in?
I don't recall.
Okay. Well, can you tell the jury while you were there in the condo, did the defendant say anything in your presence?
He did.
And can you tell the jury what he said?
Yeah, he was talking to Danny, and he said, we need to sit down and talk about our story.
Can you tell the jurors, did he say anything else?
Not that I recall. I was there very briefly. I was there to just pick her up and take her to work.
Okay. Did he ever during this conversation explain what he meant by sitting down and talking about our story?
No.
While you were there, can you tell the jurors, did you see your wife sit down with the defendant and talk about the story?
No.
How long did you say you stayed in the condo?
How long was I there?
Yeah, to pick up your wife.
Just a couple minutes.
And so, after you heard this from the defendant, what did you do?
We left shortly thereafter.
Okay. Now, can you tell the jury, did you become aware that your wife was being asked to speak to?
And again, this is called for a hearsay response.
It really goes to explain his actions.
And his actions were at issue with this case.
Actions.
So his actions are at issue in this case, but you should ask a different question if you're trying to get this witness to talk about things he did.
Okay. During the first week of October, did you and your wife leave your home one evening?
Yes.
Okay.
That's pretty general.
Okay, and then if Mr. Rocker wants to make it more specific, he can.
And was there a particular reason why you and your wife left your home one evening during the first week of October?
Yes.
And where did you go when you left your home that evening?
Went over to Dale's house.
Dale who?
Dale Cardwell.
And who was he to you?
It's a friend.
Okay. Why did you go to Dale Cardwell's house?
Again, I think that was all for a hearsay response.
I think you can answer it without saying what somebody else told him.
Right.
Well, let's see what.
I'm struggling to see how he would be sharing with the jury why for a reason other than ultimately someone told me X. So
Okay.
we went.
Okay. All right. When you got to Dale Cardwell's house, did you spend the night?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell the jury, were you still there the next day after spending the night?
Yes.
Do you recall what day that would have been in October?
I really don't.
Okay. And can you tell the jury, did you receive any phone calls from the defendant that day?
Yes.
That you were at Dale Cardwell's?
Yes.
And how many phone calls did you receive from the defendant?
I don't know. There's a bunch of them.
A bunch of them. And can you tell the jurors, do you remember the last 4 digits of the phone that you would have had for your phone number during that time?
My phone number?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the last 4 digits.
Last 4 is 5108.
It's 5.
5108.
That's a cell phone. Yes.
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to tender into evidence State's Exhibit number 145. They are phone records from AT&T for Mr. Tom Carter. There is a declaration of authenticity attached to the front of the disc, which is actually marked as 145.
Mr. Harvey, any objection to states 145? Admitted.
Now, amongst the many phone calls that you, first of all, how did you recognize or know that the phone calls you were receiving were from the defendant?
Because he's in my address book.
I didn't hear you.
He's in my address book in my phone. So his name came up.
His name came up on the phone, right?
That's right.
Okay. And so can you tell the jury what kind of phone did you have at the time?
I think it was an Android phone.
Okay. And can you tell the jury, does your phone indicate if there are any voicemail messages left?
Yes.
And can you tell the jury were any voicemail messages left in the phone calls you received from the defendant?
Yes.
Did you check those voicemail messages?
Yes.
And did you recognize the voice in the voicemail messages?
Yes.
Who did the voice belong to?
Tex.
Now, after you listened to the voicemail message, can you tell the jury what did you do with the message?
I deleted it.
Okay. And early last year, you were kind enough to invite me to your home where I had a chance to speak to you.
Yes.
At that time, can you tell the jurors, did you share with me the circumstances surrounding this deleted voicemail message?
Yes.
And did I send someone out to your house in connection with this deleted voicemail message?
Yes.
Who did I send?
Adam.
Mr. Adam Obadi.
That's right.
And when Mr. Obadi came to your home, what did he do?
He was able to retrieve the message.
And in connection with the preparation for your testimony here today, have you had a chance to actually listen to that voicemail message left for you by the defendant?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury, is it the voicemail message, has it been altered in any way from the original message that you heard when you checked your voicemail?
No.
And the voicemail message that you heard in connection with your preparation for your testimony, it's a true and accurate and unaltered version of what you heard when you checked your messages.
Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, I want to identify for the record State's Exhibit number 295. It is a disc. Mr. Carter, do you see your initials anywhere on that disc?
Yes.
And do you see a date on that disc?
Yes.
What date is on the disc?
3/18/18.
And is that the date in which you last listened to that voicemail message left for you by the defendant?
Yes.
And the voicemail message that you listened to on that disc, is it a true, accurate, and exact copy of what was left on your voicemail by the defendant
Yes.
that you heard with your own ears?
Yes.
Okay. I would tender State's 295, Judge, in evidence at this time.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I missed
It's okay.
that. It's the no objection response.
Okay.
Is that?
295 is admitted.
And I would move to publish it, Judge,
Okay.
to the jury.
You got it. You can do that.
And in connection, Judge, we've got some speakers. I wanted to make sure the jurors could hear it, but having sat up there over the weekend, I know it's kind of hard to hear just based on kind of the way the courtroom is set up.
You didn't want those chairs to feel lonely over the weekend?
I didn't.
Okay.
But in connection with this part of the testimony, a transcript has been prepared for the voicemail message that we're about to hear. I would ask the court to allow the state to pass out copies of the transcript to the jury to be used as an aid. And I would expect the court to instruct the jurors that the transcript is not evidence, the actual recording is evidence, and of course they would not be able to take the transcript out with them during the deliberations.
In fact, you would collect the transcripts from them
I
right
would.
after.
That's right.
Okay. Mr. Harvey, have you had a chance to review the transcript?
I'm confident that I have in the past, but I would like to see the official version.
I've got one for you, Your Honor,
Thank you.
and one for the court reporter to be marked as a court's exhibit.
Okay. Thank you. And I'll take the court's exhibit.
And Your Honor, the court allowed me to distribute to the jurors.
Not yet.
Not
You
yet.
did
Okay.
hear from
Okay.
Mr. Harvey, giving him a chance to process that. Mr. Harvey.
With regard to the transcript, I don't have any objection to the use of the transcript, not necessarily the cover page.
Or the page on the back.
Or the page in the back, as long as it's accompanied by appropriate 105 instruction with regard to its proper use and how it is to be used and taken by the jurors.
Sure, and what I'll do is ask the state to hand out only what is page 2 in the handout,
Sure.
the actual proposed transcript.
Just
And-
remove off the cover page, is that what you're saying?
Well, and mine has 3 pages. There's a cover page, and then there's a page that shares some information about the process used. And Mr. Harvey is saying, let's just give them the transcript. I think that's fair.
Sure.
So they'll just get page 2. And ladies and gentlemen, as Mr. Rucker's colleagues are frantically pulling out pages 1 and 3, let me share with you this. You will have before you, each of you, there'll be one for each of you, a transcript that purports to be a transcription of what you're going to hear through State's Exhibit 295. The transcript is not evidence, it's not better evidence, it's not best evidence. It's an aid if it is helpful to you in following along with what you hear. The evidence is State's 295. If you need it replayed because you can't hear it, we will replay it once. But the transcript is merely an aid to assist you, if it does, as you're listening to what is spoken in State's 295. The transcript will be collected from you when we're done listening to it. Mr. Harvey, anything you want to add? Okay. So once you have 15 of those, Deputy Kane, you can distribute them to the jury. Mr. Price, off the record, I'm giving you what is now Court's Exhibit 3. Copy of that.
Thank you.
Is there any juror who does not have a transcript? Seeing no hands, let us publish 295, please.
I promise you, you did a test run this morning.
In this courtroom?
Yes.
How about this? If you think you can't fix it in about 1 minute, we can just take our lunch break now and be back here around 1 o'clock. And that'll give you a chance for the second time today to get into work while no one's here.
I appreciate it. Yes, let's do that.
Okay, let's collect all those. I know Deputy King, you just went through a great effort to hand those. Everyone pass them to the left, just like juror questions. You mastered that. Pass them down and to the left. You make sure we get all 15. I promise we'll get them back to you. 105. That's 45 minutes from now. Is that enough time for you all? Anyone need more than that? We'll see you all back here at 105. We'll see if the technological gods have smiled upon the state. Between now and then, enjoy your break. Don't talk about the case. Don't get blown away by the winds going on out there. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
All rise for the jury.
And Mr. Carter, you are free to enjoy the lunch break. Please don't talk about the case or your testimony with anyone during your lunch break, and we'll see you back at 1 o'clock. Mr. Rucker, anything before we break for lunch?
No.
You've got other witnesses for later this afternoon? Okay. Mr. Samuel, oh, there, I didn't see Mr. Carter back there, already getting protein bars. Anything before we break for lunch? All right, we'll see you guys a little after 1 o'clock. Thank you.